What's good, YouTube? Time to start our look at the Universal cards that are available in the new Farstriders expansion for Warhammer Underworlds Tactics. Now, as per usual, this series is all hot takes. This is my first impression of seeing the cards with no research done beforehand besides looking at what they have shown off on Warhammer Community. This is a part that I've really been looking forward to, as this is going to really inform how our meta changes going forward. Also, considering that we have reached this point in the expansion cycle, we can now look at the first season of Shadespire, or rather Shadespire entirely, as a finished work, a completed work. So we can kind of see what their design intention was from the start. But anyway, this particular episode is going to be based on the the universal objectives that are going to come in the Farstriders expansion. Let's go ahead and get started. Alright, our first one is Unstoppable. Score this immediately if one of your fighters makes a successful attack action against an enemy fighter on guard. Okay, so this is for 1 glory point. It is a score immediately, which is good. But that being said, there's two things I don't like here. One, by definition, making a successful attack action on somebody who's on guard is hard. That's the point of guard. This is going to be very difficult to pull off. Second, this is based on something that your opponent does. You're going to have to rely on your opponent choosing to go on guard, which we really don't see that much of these days, especially if you happen to be in a very aggressive meta. Now, what we do know is that the first the Night Haunts in the next season of Warhammer Underworlds seem to have some sort of guard-based mechanic. I'm not sure exactly how that works, and I'm also not even sure that we'll be able to use our existing cards in that season of Warhammer Underworlds. So we're best served looking at this in terms of how it affects us now, and it's just not that good. Skirting Danger. 1 glory point. Score this in an end phase. If all surviving friendly fighters, at least 2, are on edge hexes. Okay, so this is another one that's kind of weak at first blush to me. It's something you score in an end phase and only get 1 glory point, which I'm not a big fan of. That seems like a bit of a waste to me. If I'm going to wait till the end of one of the turns in order to score an objective, I'm going to want more than 1 glory point out of the deal. In addition, the condition for this is a bit onerous. Having all of your surviving friendly fighters on edge hexes. I mean, if you happen to be playing a deck that wants to post up on the back line, yeah, this could be good. But the problem is that outside of that, this doesn't really synergize with anything apart from the obvious cards it would use in a build like that. For example, Sigmar's Bulwark, or anything based on just not taking any damage. If you're not playing that type of deck, this doesn't really fit with anything. It just seems bad. Even if I was playing that type of deck, I don't know that I would really want this card again, because you have to wait to the end phase to score it, and it's only 1 glory. Our only way out. Okay, now we're getting to the good stuff. Score this in an end phase if you hold 3 or more objectives. Okay. So this is Supremacy. It's a weaker version of Supremacy because you're only getting 2 glory as opposed to 3. So on paper, that's mechanically worse. However, the nice thing about it is it's a second supremacy. So also keep in mind that Magor's Fiends and Farstriders have a supremacy-like objective card. So if you were playing as one of those, you could play that card plus supremacy plus this for a total possible 8 objective points or 8 glory points. Also, if you are playing a faction that doesn't have the extra supremacy objective, you can make do with this. It's not quite as good as supremacy or one of the factional supremacies, but still quite good. I like the design space of this card. Heroes All. Score this in an end phase if all of your surviving fighters, at least 3, are inspired. Okay, so we've got a similar set of problems here. It's an end phase card that only gives you 1 glory. It can be difficult to pull off, especially because one of the most inherently balanced aspects of each warband is how difficult it is to inspire all of them. I could definitely see this being worthwhile for Magor's Fiends, and they're the ones shown in the card art, because they're extremely easy to inspire. Beyond that, I could see using this with Ironjaws if you are playing Shardgale. But beyond that, this is going to be really hard to pull off for only 1 glory point. Fearless. I think it's hilarious that they have a Skaven on the art for this one. Score this in an end phase if there are at least 3 enemy fighters adjacent to the same friendly fighter for 1 glory. Again, same problem. If you're going to make me wait until the end phase, I need more than 1 glory point, and there's plenty of cards that allow that for me. The cost of this card to me is not necessarily its place in your 1 out of 12 objective slots. It's not getting that fighter adjacent to 3 enemies. It's putting that fighter in a position where they're going to be adjacent to 3 enemy fighters. That's essentially having that fighter commit suicide. I don't like that. And if I was going to like that, I would want more than 1 glory point for it. Now, that being said, if these cards stick around for a while and we end up coming out with a faction that is maybe 2 or 1 model, I could see this then becoming a little bit more useful. Defensive Strike. Okay, score this immediately when your warband takes an enemy fighter standing in your territory out of action. Okay, I like it. It's a score immediately card. It's pretty common to have an enemy fighter in your territory. Occasionally you're going to be fighting against a warband that is 100% defensive, but I think that the current meta doesn't favor that. I think there's just not enough good objectives for staying entirely in your deployment zone. Usually when I find that people are only in their own half of the board, it's because you're forcing them to be. Which makes this a lot more viable. Yeah, it's just a straight up good card. It's a lot like the Crushing Force or Precise Use of Force type cards, except it's going to be a lot easier to pull off. Concerted Attack. Score this immediately if 3 or more friendly fighters made an attack action against the same enemy fighter in this phase. Okay, I like this one. It's a score immediately. which makes me okay with 1 glory point. It's if you're playing a faction with a lot of model count, for example, Blood Reavers, Skaven, Sepulchral Guard, you're going to want to do this anyway, and you're probably going to want to do this against the enemy leader. So this synergizes very nicely with several other cards, and it's a score immediately. Interestingly, these do not have to be successful attack actions. You could completely whiff as long as you made an attack action. Then you satisfy the condition for this card. This is an excellent card. Alright, complete victory. Score this in the 3rd end phase. Ugh. If none of your fighters are out of action. Ugh. Alright. Oh, if you're... This is very difficult to pull off. I think if you are... I don't think that you can reliably expect to get through a game without losing anybody. And on top of that, there are other cards that do this better, both in and out of faction. I mean, it is 3 glory points, and if you're playing a purely defensive build, I still don't think it's a good idea. Just because if you're playing a purely defensive build, your opponent has no response but to go full on offense, which means they are eventually going to kill something. This one is, as a victory condition, it's just too easy to fail. Alright, change of tactics. Score this immediately if a friendly fighter on guard makes a charge action. Okay, I like it. I like it for a couple of reasons. Score immediately, it's 1 glory point, and it's entirely based on your actions. If you're playing a faction, a regular faction, then you can spend essentially 2 actions, a guard and then a charge, and get this objective guaranteed. And you can do so in the middle of a turn, which means that you're immediately going to turn around and spend that on an upgrade. So this is a great way to increase the tempo on your opponent. But where I think this gets really good is there are a number of ploy cards that allow you to put one of your fighters on guard, particularly if you're playing Liberators or Rangers. You could drop all of this in 1 turn. Well, technically 2 turns because of the way that ploys are played. So you would play this at the end of your opponent's turn to put somebody on guard. Then on your turn, turn around and have that fighter charge. And then score this immediately. Then turn around and use that glory point for cool benefits. Again, I'm always a fan of score immediately cards, which means I think that this is definitely probably one of the stronger cards in this set. Balance of Power. Okay, interesting. This is a score immediately that's worth 2 glory points. Score this immediately when making an attack action if both the attacker and the target have 2 supporting fighters. Ooh. Oh, wow. That's going to be... Oh, that's going to be really difficult to pull off. The payoff is huge because you've got 2 glory points on a score immediately card. But the sheer number of moving parts involved here makes this really difficult to pull off. If you could spend the first couple activations moving your guys into position into a shield wall, 3-person shield wall. Then lure your opponent into charging in with 1, preferably 2 figures right into the middle of that shield wall, which they're not going to want to do. You could then use movement shenanigans to force the other pieces into place, which that's a huge number of moving parts, and it's a big commitment. It's a big investment. This is one of those cards where I think a real master of the game could pull it off. My question is, why would they want to? For all of the resources you spend on getting these 2 glory points, why not, any other 2 score immediately cards? The nice thing about the other score immediately cards is the condition by which you get them is a goal in and of itself. You, at the end of the day, have killed something. This, you probably, I don't know, that attack might be a kill shot. But that's not what it reads on paper. It's not a 100% deal. Yeah, I think I'd just rather use other score immediately cards in this one's place. Alright, Advancing Strike. Here's another score immediately. Interesting that we've seen a lot of score immediately cards within this particular set, considering that the factional objectives had hardly any. They only had 1 score immediately, so I feel like this is kind of to compensate for that. Because keep in mind, Shadespire is meant to be playable with just 1 expansion. And no other cards. I've never seen anybody actually try to do that, but in theory it's possible. So we have to remember that when we're trying to figure out GW's design here. In any case, Advancing Strike, score this immediately when your warband takes an enemy fighter standing in enemy territory out of action. Okay, so it's the opposite of Defensive Strike, naturally. In my opinion, a lot better, but then keep in mind, I play very aggressively. So everything that I said about Defensive Strike could be said about this, just with fewer of the cons. Yeah, excellent card. I don't see a reason not to include this in any aggressive deck. Interestingly, it doesn't specify what kind of enemy fighter it is. So you can just roll up and take out somebody's chaff and immediately get 2 glory points. The more I look at this card, the more I like it. Okay, that's the last of them. So it's kind of a mixed bag here, but we're seeing a lot of score immediately cards, a lot of consistent and achievable score immediately cards. So this is going to be a very strong addition to the game. I think we're going to see a lot of tempo pushing cards as a result of this particular set. But I'd be interested to hear your opinions. Please comment below whether you agree, disagree, or if you have any other thoughts or ideas that come to you upon viewing these cards at first blush, or maybe you've got some experience by now playing with them. Let us know. In the meantime, please like, share, and subscribe to this video to help us bring you more Warhammer Underworlds content. And until next time, have a good one.